Imagine a world where a single peppercorn was worth more than its weight in gold. In the 15th century, this tiny black grain held such immense value that it could purchase a house in Lisbon or seal alliances between kingdoms. Picture merchants crossing treacherous seas, risking everything for a cargo hold filled with these precious spices. This is no fantasy tale from a merchant's fevered dreams. This was the reality of the spice trade that transformed the world during the 15th and 16th centuries. In an age when food preservation was primitive and meals were often bland, spices became the most coveted commodities on earth. A merchant who successfully brought a shipment of pepper, cinnamon, or nutmeg from the distant east to European ports could amass a fortune greater than many nobles. These aromatic treasures sparked a revolution in trade, triggered wars, birthed empires, and ultimately led to the first wave of globalization. The quest for spices drove Portuguese and Spanish sailors to venture into unknown waters, mapping new routes and connecting continents in ways never before imagined. When Venetian traders could demand a king's ransom for a sack of peppercorns, and a handful of cloves could set a common man up for life, you begin to understand why brave souls would risk everything on the treacherous spice routes. This is the story of how tiny seeds and dried bark changed the course of human history, redrew the maps of power, and created the first truly global economy. Each spice is a treasure, each route a conquest, each ship a nation. These prophetic words, penned by a Portuguese navigator in his weathered journal, would echo through the centuries as a testament to an age of discovery and untold riches. The year is 1498. The creaking of wooden masts pierces the dawn air as seawater sprays across the bow. The salty tang of the ocean mingles with an intoxicating bouquet of cinnamon and pepper wafting from the holds below. Standing at the helm, Vasco da Gama gazes upon the shores of Calicut, having just accomplished what many deemed impossible, establishing the first direct sea route from Portugal to India. This moment would forever alter the course of global commerce and human history. The value of his cargo would be almost impossible to comprehend in modern terms. A single ship's hold filled with spices could generate profits of up to 60,000%. These precious botanicals would transform modest merchants into wealthy nobles and turn small kingdoms into mighty empires. The spice trade was so lucrative that a merchant could retire after a single successful voyage. But success came at a terrible price. The seas claimed their toll with merciless regularity. For every 3 ships that set sail from Lisbon's harbor, only 1 would return. The others would be lost to fierce storms, treacherous reefs, or hostile raiders. The bones of countless sailors lie scattered across the ocean floor, testament to their courage and ambition. Despite these dangers, there was never a shortage of brave souls willing to risk everything for a chance at unimaginable wealth. In the markets of Europe, a handful of peppercorns could be worth more than a common laborer's yearly wages. Spices weren't just seasonings, they were currency, status symbols, and diplomatic gifts. A dowry might be paid in cinnamon, a peace treaty sealed with cloves, a royal debt settled with nutmeg. These aromatic treasures were quite literally worth their weight in silver, and sometimes even in gold. This was the dawn of the first global economy, where a clove picked in the Moluccas could end up seasoning a nobleman's meal in London, and where the fortunes of distant continents became forever intertwined by the invisible threads of trade. Vasco da Gama's achievement would reshape the world's economic map, shifting power from the Mediterranean to the Atlantic, and establishing a new world order that would endure for centuries to come. Vasco da Gama emerged from relatively humble beginnings as the son of a minor Portuguese aristocrat, Estevão da Gama, in the small coastal town of Sines. While his family held a respectable position, they were far from the grand nobility that dominated Portuguese society. This background would shape his fierce determination and relentless ambition. Unlike many of his contemporaries who inherited vast fortunes, da Gama understood that his path to greatness would be carved by his own hands. From an early age, da Gama displayed an almost obsessive interest in navigation and maritime trade. His father's position as governor of Sines and Alcácer do Sal provided him with early exposure to maritime affairs, but it was his personal drive that set him apart. He studied mathematics, astronomy, and navigation with an intensity that bordered on fixation. By his early 30s, he had already gained a reputation as a skilled navigator and a ruthless negotiator. What truly set da Gama apart was his burning desire to break Venice's stranglehold on the spice trade. He viewed the Venetian monopoly not just as an economic obstacle, but as a personal challenge to Portuguese greatness. His ambition aligned perfectly with King Manuel I's vision of Portuguese expansion, earning him the command of the historic expedition to India. This was more than a voyage. It was a calculated strike at the heart of Venetian commercial dominance. On the other side of this economic battlefield stood the Venetian merchants, the established masters of the spice trade. For centuries, Venice had built its enormous wealth and influence through an intricate network of trade routes and relationships stretching from the Mediterranean to the Far East. Their system was a masterpiece of commercial engineering, involving complex arrangements with Arab traders, Byzantine merchants, and Asian suppliers. The Venetian trading houses were sophisticated operations, run by families who had spent generations perfecting their business model. They maintained a vast network of agents, warehouses, and ships throughout the Mediterranean. Their influence extended from Alexandria to Constantinople, with detailed intelligence networks providing them information about prices, political changes, and trade conditions across their domain. When news of Portuguese successes began to reach Venice, the initial reaction was dismissive. The Venetians had weathered countless challenges to their supremacy before. However, as Portuguese ships began returning laden with spices from direct trading with India, the reality of their situation became clear. The Venetian response revealed both their strengths and limitations. While they attempted to maintain their traditional routes and relationships, they also began diversifying their investments and seeking new opportunities. Perhaps most fascinating was the Venetian merchants' ability to adapt. While their monopoly was broken, they didn't disappear. Instead, they transformed their business models, focusing on luxury goods, banking, and their traditional strengths in Mediterranean trade. Some even formed partnerships with Portuguese traders, demonstrating the pragmatic flexibility that had made them successful in the first place. This clash between da Gama's raw ambition and Venetian commercial sophistication would reshape global trade. Da Gama's success wasn't just about finding a route to India. It was about breaking a centuries-old economic system and establishing a new one. His obsession with defeating Venetian dominance would help create the first truly global trading network, shifting the center of economic power from the Mediterranean to the Atlantic, and establishing patterns of international trade that would influence centuries of commerce. Step aboard a Portuguese carrack in the late 15th century, and your senses are immediately assaulted by a symphony of maritime life. The constant creaking of wooden timbers forms a ceaseless backdrop as the massive vessel rocks against the waves. Thick hemp ropes stretch and groan under tension, while canvas sails snap and flutter in the salt-laden wind. The ship itself seems alive, speaking in an ancient language of creaks, groans, and subtle movements. Below deck, the air is thick with an intoxicating blend of aromas. Peppercorns stored in massive burlap sacks release their sharp, pungent scent that tickles your nose and makes your eyes water. Cinnamon bark, carefully wrapped in palm leaves, adds its sweet and woody fragrance to the air. Nutmeg and mace from the distant Banda Islands contribute their warm, aromatic notes, while cloves from the Moluccas add their intense, almost medicinal scent. These precious spices mix with the ever-present smell of tar, wet wood, and the musty odor of damp rope. In the bustling ports of Lisbon, Calicut, or Malacca, the sensory experience becomes even more intense. The cacophony of dozens of languages fills the air as merchants haggle and negotiate. Arabic mingles with Portuguese, Chinese with Tamil, creating a linguistic tapestry as rich as the goods being traded. The sharp clanking of coins, the rustling of papers, and the thud of cargo being loaded and unloaded provide a constant percussion to this commercial symphony. The visual splendor is equally magnificent. Merchants stride through the marketplace wearing their wealth on their bodies. Venetian traders sport deep crimson robes trimmed with fur, their status displayed in every careful detail of their dress. Portuguese nobles wear doublets of finest silk, imported from China, while Arab merchants don flowing robes of intricate patterns. Their clothing is not just fashion, it's a statement of power, wealth, and commercial influence. The marketplaces themselves are a feast for the eyes. Rolls of Chinese silk in impossible shades of blue, green, and purple catch the light like liquid gems. Indian cotton so fine it seems to float on the air is carefully wrapped and stored. Precious stones from Ceylon sparkle alongside pearls from Bahrain. Every surface seems to hold some treasure. Brass scales for weighing spices, intricate wood carvings, delicate porcelain from distant China. The docks themselves tell stories of far-off lands. Ships from a dozen nations crowd the harbors, their distinctive designs revealing their origins. Sleek Arab dhows with their triangular sails dock alongside heavy Portuguese carracks. Chinese junks with their massive rudders and distinctive sails tower over smaller local fishing vessels. Each ship brings its own cargo, its own crew, its own tales of adventure and peril on the high seas. As evening approaches, the ports take on a different character. Torchlight reflects off the water, creating dancing patterns on the hulls of ships. The day's frenetic pace slows as merchants retire to counting houses to tally their profits or losses. The air grows heavy with the smoke from cooking fires, mixing with the ever-present aroma of spices to create an atmosphere thick with possibility and promise. This was a world where fortune and ruin sailed on the same tide, where a single successful voyage could transform a modest merchant into a wealthy trader, and where the next great opportunity might arrive with tomorrow's tide. It was an age of discovery, of risk, and of transformation, where the air itself seemed charged with the electricity of change and the promise of riches beyond imagination. The story of spices begins in the mythical Spice Islands, now known as the Moluccas in modern-day Indonesia. These small volcanic islands, scattered like emerald drops in the vast Indonesian archipelago, were the world's sole source of some of history's most precious commodities. Here, in this remote corner of the globe, grew the trees that produced cloves, nutmeg, and mace, spices so valuable they would drive the first wave of globalization. The native peoples of the Moluccas had cultivated these precious plants for millennia, carefully guarding their growing techniques and harvesting methods. They understood the unique climate and conditions required for these spices to thrive. Clove trees, reaching heights of up to 40 feet, produced their precious buds just twice a year. Nutmeg trees required 15 years to mature before bearing fruit, their seeds wrapped in the crimson web of mace that would fetch astronomical prices in European markets. The traditional route these spices took to reach European tables was an epic journey spanning thousands of miles and passing through dozens of hands. From the Moluccas, Arab traders would sail these precious cargoes through the Strait of Malacca, across the Indian Ocean, and up the Red Sea. From there, caravans would traverse treacherous deserts, crossing the lands of sultans and emperors, each adding their own taxes and tariffs to the final price. These land routes were masterpieces of medieval commerce. Caravans would stop at great trading cities like Calicut, Hormuz, and Alexandria. At each stop, spices would be traded, repackaged, and their prices would multiply. By the time they reached Venice, the end point of this elaborate network, the price of these spices had increased by as much as 1,000%. The Venetians then controlled distribution throughout Europe, maintaining a virtual monopoly that made their city-state one of the wealthiest and most powerful in the world. The Portuguese disruption of this ancient trade network was nothing short of revolutionary. When Vasco da Gama found a direct sea route to India, circumnavigating Africa, he didn't just discover a new way to transport spices. He shattered a centuries-old economic order. The Portuguese followed this success by systematically mapping the routes to the Spice Islands themselves, establishing fortified trading posts along the way, and using their superior naval technology to dominate the sea lanes. Spain soon joined the race, sending expeditions across the Pacific to reach the Spice Islands from the east. Magellan's famous circumnavigation of the globe was, at its heart, an attempt to find a new route to these precious islands. The competition between these European powers would lead to the first division of the globe into spheres of influence, marked by the Treaty of Tordesillas. This competition marked the beginning of the first truly global economy. For the first time in history, ships could circumnavigate the globe, carrying goods directly from producer to consumer. Trading posts established by Europeans in Asia became the seeds of colonial empires. New financial instruments were developed to fund these expensive voyages, leading to the creation of the first multinational corporations like the Dutch East India Company. The transformation was profound and irreversible. Prices of spices in Europe plummeted as direct maritime trade eliminated dozens of middlemen. Cities that had grown rich on the old trade routes declined, while Atlantic ports rose to prominence. New foods and customs spread across the globe as ships carried not just spices, but ideas, technologies, and cultures across the world's oceans. This new global trading system would set patterns that persist to the present day. The concepts of international trade routes, colonial exploitation, multinational corporations, and global commodity markets all trace their origins to this pivotal period when European sailors first found their way to the Spice Islands. The historical record of the spice trade era survives through a remarkable collection of primary sources. Among the most valuable are Vasco da Gama's letters, which provide intimate details of his voyages. In his correspondence to King Manuel I, da Gama meticulously described the challenges of navigation, diplomatic encounters, and trade negotiations. One particularly revealing letter from 1499 details his first successful return from India, where he describes the profitable exchange of Portuguese goods for spices in Calicut, writing, "The warehouses overflow with cinnamon, cloves, and pepper, such quantities as would fill 1,000 ships." The accounting records of these voyages paint a vivid picture of the economics involved. Portuguese royal ledgers from 1506 show that a single successful spice voyage could yield profits exceeding 4,000%. These documents reveal precise calculations of cargo weights, purchase prices in India, and selling prices in Lisbon. A fascinating entry from 1505 records the payment of 22,000 cruzados for a cargo of pepper that would later sell in Antwerp for nearly 150,000 cruzados. Maritime charts and maps from this period demonstrate the rapid evolution of geographical knowledge. The famous Cantino planisphere of 1502 represents one of the earliest surviving Portuguese world maps showing their discoveries. This remarkable document reveals secret trade routes, safe harbors, and dangerous shoals, marked with an accuracy that amazed contemporary navigators. The Pedro Reynel Atlas of 1504 provides detailed coastal profiles of Africa and India, including precise wind patterns and ocean currents essential for successful navigation. Ship designs and technical drawings from the period reveal the sophisticated engineering of Portuguese carracks and caravels. Technical manuscripts detail the construction of these vessels, showing innovations like the triangular lateen sails that allowed ships to sail closer to the wind, and the multiple deck configurations that maximized cargo space while maintaining seaworthiness. A particularly detailed drawing from 1505 shows the internal structure of a Portuguese nau, complete with specifications for the ship's hold designed specifically for spice transport, with special compartments to keep different spices separate and protected from moisture. Royal inventories list the specialized equipment carried aboard these vessels. These documents describe sophisticated navigational tools like the quadrant and astrolabe, along with detailed instructions for their use. Maintenance records show how ships were modified to withstand long ocean voyages, with innovations in hull design and wood treatment to resist the shipworm that plagued vessels in tropical waters. The Casa de India archives in Lisbon contain thousands of documents recording every aspect of the spice trade, from crew manifests to cargo inventories. These records show how Portuguese administrators managed this complex enterprise, tracking everything from sailor salaries to spice prices across different markets. One particularly detailed document from 1520 provides a complete accounting of a fleet's journey, including casualties, repairs, and the exact quantities of spices brought back to Portugal. The personal journals of ship captains and pilots offer glimpses into daily life aboard these vessels. These accounts describe navigation techniques, weather patterns, and encounters with other trading vessels. They also reveal the human cost of these voyages, with vivid descriptions of diseases, accidents, and the constant threat of piracy. These surviving documents, maps, and technical drawings provide an invaluable window into this transformative period of human history. Together, they tell the story of how technological innovation, careful planning, and meticulous record-keeping enabled the creation of the first truly global trading network. The impact of the spice trade fundamentally altered the course of human civilization, creating ripples that continue to influence our world today. The most dramatic immediate change was the seismic shift of economic power from the Mediterranean to the Atlantic. Venice, once the undisputed queen of commerce, watched helplessly as its economic dominance crumbled. Cities like Lisbon, Antwerp, Amsterdam, and London rose to prominence, their harbors bustling with ships laden with exotic cargo from distant shores. This transformation wasn't merely geographic. It represented a complete restructuring of global economic power that would shape centuries of commerce. The establishment of direct maritime routes to Asia marked humanity's first steps toward a truly global economy. For the first time in history, a unified trading system emerged that connected 4 continents in a web of commerce. This new economic order introduced concepts we take for granted today: international price mechanisms, global supply chains, and maritime insurance. The Portuguese innovation of the Carreira de India, the India Run, established the first regularized intercontinental trading route, creating a model for global commerce that would endure for centuries. The transformation of world trade relations was profound and multifaceted. Traditional overland trade routes, some operating since Roman times, fell into decline as maritime trade proved more efficient and profitable. New financial instruments emerged to fund these expensive voyages, leading to the creation of joint stock companies and early forms of international banking. The Dutch East India Company, established in 1602, became the world's first multinational corporation, complete with publicly traded shares and corporate governance structures that would be recognizable today. This period witnessed the birth of modern financial markets. The need to finance expensive voyages led to innovations in credit and banking. The Amsterdam Stock Exchange, founded in 1602, became the world's first modern stock market, trading shares in merchant companies and creating new forms of wealth based on investment rather than land ownership. These financial innovations provided the framework for modern global capitalism. The rise of European colonization emerged as a direct consequence of the spice trade. What began as a network of trading posts gradually evolved into territorial control. The Portuguese established their Estado de India, a network of coastal fortifications and trading posts stretching from East Africa to the Moluccas. This model of colonial expansion would be replicated by other European powers, leading to centuries of colonial dominance that would reshape the political and cultural landscape of entire continents. The impact on global demographics was equally profound. New patterns of human migration emerged as sailors, merchants, and settlers moved across the globe in unprecedented numbers. Many ports became cosmopolitan centers where different cultures, languages, and religions mixed in ways never before possible. Macau, Goa, and Malacca transformed into unique hybrid cultures that reflected this new global interconnectedness. The environmental impact was equally significant. The demand for ships led to intensive deforestation in Europe, while the introduction of new crops and animals to different continents permanently altered local ecosystems. The exchange of plants and agricultural techniques led to what historians call the Columbian Exchange, though this process had begun with the Portuguese spice trade routes. Perhaps most significantly, this period marked the beginning of global consciousness. For the first time, people began to think of the world as an interconnected whole rather than a collection of isolated regions. Maps became more accurate, knowledge of different cultures spread, and a sense of global geography emerged. This intellectual revolution would influence everything from scientific thought to philosophy and literature. The economic impact reverberated through society in unexpected ways. As spices became more available, their value gradually decreased, but this democratization of once luxury items led to profound changes in European cuisine, medicine, and daily life. The wealth generated by the spice trade created a new merchant class that would eventually challenge the traditional feudal power structure of Europe. The legacy of this transformation continues to influence our modern world. The global trading systems established during this period laid the groundwork for today's international commerce. The financial instruments developed to fund these ventures evolved into modern banking and investment systems. Even the challenges we face today in global trade, questions of market access, trade routes, and economic dominance, echo the concerns of those first global traders who ventured across unknown seas in search of spices. This period represents one of history's great inflection points, where the actions of a few nations and individuals set in motion changes that would transform human civilization. The world we inhabit today, with its global markets, multinational corporations, and interconnected economies, was born in the wake of those first Portuguese ships that rounded the Cape of Good Hope in search of spices. The Age of Discovery marked an unprecedented period of technological and intellectual advancement that fundamentally transformed human civilization. The demands of long-distance maritime travel catalyzed a revolution in navigation and cartography that would forever change humanity's relationship with the globe. Portuguese mariners developed and refined the art of celestial navigation, introducing sophisticated techniques for determining latitude using the quadrant and astrolabe. These innovations allowed ships to venture far from coastal waters with unprecedented accuracy, effectively transforming the open ocean from a terrifying void into a navigable highway. Cartographic knowledge underwent a radical transformation during this period. The creation of the portolan charts, with their innovative wind roses and distance scales, provided sailors with remarkably accurate navigational tools. The Portuguese system of padros, stone pillars erected along the African coast, created a network of known positions that helped standardize maritime cartography. The development of the Mercator projection in 1569, though coming later, was a direct response to the navigational challenges discovered during this era. These maps not only guided ships, but also revolutionized how humanity conceived of global space and distance. The philosophical underpinnings of this age found their expression in mercantilism, a revolutionary economic doctrine that would dominate European thought for centuries. Mercantilism represented more than just an economic theory. It was a comprehensive worldview that linked national power, commerce, and maritime supremacy into a coherent system. The Portuguese practice of mare clausum, the concept of a closed sea under national control, challenged traditional ideas about maritime freedom and established new paradigms of state power that extended far beyond territorial waters. This period witnessed a fundamental revolution in geographical knowledge that shattered classical assumptions about the world's structure. The discovery that the torrid zone was not only habitable, but home to sophisticated civilizations forced European scholars to reassess their entire worldview. The Portuguese voyages definitively proved that Africa could be circumnavigated, that the Indian Ocean was not an enclosed sea, and that the equatorial regions were navigable. These discoveries demanded a complete revision of traditional Ptolemaic geography and sparked a scientific revolution in how humans understood their world. Technological innovation in shipbuilding and navigation reached unprecedented levels. The development of the caravel, with its revolutionary combination of square and lateen sails, created vessels capable of both ocean crossing and coastal exploration. Portuguese shipwrights perfected the design of the nau, or carrack, creating ships capable of carrying enough cargo to make long-distance trade profitable while remaining defensible against pirates and rival powers. The introduction of the multiple-masted ship with mixed sail plans allowed vessels to handle a wider range of wind conditions, dramatically improving their reliability and range. The impact on navigational technology extended far beyond just ships and maps. New instruments were developed or refined, including the magnetic compass, advanced astronomical tables, and sophisticated timekeeping devices. The creation of the nocturnal and the improvement of the astrolabe allowed for more precise celestial navigation. The development of mathematical tables and navigational almanacs, particularly the Portuguese regiment of the North Star, provided sailors with practical tools for determining their position at sea. This period also saw the emergence of systematic approaches to knowledge accumulation and distribution. The Portuguese Casa de India and Armazém de Guiné became centers for collecting and analyzing navigational data, creating what might be considered the world's first centralized geographic databases. The practice of maintaining detailed rutas, navigational guides, and sharing this information through formal training programs at institutions like the School of Sagres represented a new approach to preserving and transmitting technical knowledge. The revolution in maritime technology had profound effects on warfare and state power. The development of naval artillery and new tactical formations transformed maritime combat. Portuguese innovations in shipborne artillery, particularly the deployment of heavy guns in broadside configurations, created new paradigms of naval warfare that would dominate the seas until the age of steam. These innovations also sparked a revolution in communication and information exchange. The establishment of regular maritime routes created the first global information networks, allowing news, ideas, and knowledge to circulate between continents with unprecedented speed and regularity. This information revolution would have profound effects on science, commerce, and cultural exchange. The legacy of this innovative period continues to influence modern technology and science. Many of the basic principles of celestial navigation developed during this era remained fundamental to maritime navigation until the advent of GPS. The systematic approach to data collection and analysis pioneered by Portuguese navigators established patterns that would evolve into modern scientific methodology. Even the basic concepts of standardization and information sharing that emerged during this period remain crucial to modern technological development. This era represents one of humanity's great innovative leaps, where practical necessity drove technological and intellectual advancement at an unprecedented pace. The solutions developed to solve the challenges of oceanic navigation would reshape not just how humans traveled the globe, but how they understood their place within it. The mysteries of the spice trade continue to captivate historians and economists to this day. One of the most intriguing mysteries revolves around the secret routes used by Arab traders before the Portuguese arrival. These merchants had discovered seasonal wind patterns and navigational techniques that they kept hidden for centuries. Some of these routes remain unknown, with ancient maps offering tantalizing clues about passages through treacherous waters that modern sailors have yet to fully understand. Among the unsolved mysteries is the location of several Portuguese shipwrecks believed to contain vast spice fortunes. Historical records mention ships laden with pepper and cinnamon that vanished en route to Lisbon, their precious cargoes now lying somewhere in the depths of the Indian Ocean. The value of these lost treasures, adjusted for modern inflation, would be staggering. A single ship's cargo of spices in the 16th century could be worth upwards of $10 million in today's currency. The relative values of spices during the age of exploration defy modern comprehension. In 1499, a pound of nutmeg in London cost more than a skilled craftsman's annual salary. Pepper was so valuable it was often used as currency, with some European cities accepting peppercorns as tax payments. A handful of cloves could buy a flock of sheep, while a small sack of cinnamon could purchase a modest house. These historical values find fascinating parallels in today's global economy. Just as control over spice routes once determined global power, modern trade routes and commodity markets continue to shape international relations. The Strait of Malacca, once crucial for spice trading vessels, remains one of the world's most important shipping lanes, with nearly 40% of global maritime trade passing through it annually. Modern commodity markets echo the spice trade speculation and price volatility. Just as merchants once gambled fortunes on spice shipments, today's traders deal in commodities like oil, rare earth metals, and agricultural products. The financial instruments developed to fund spice voyages evolved into today's stock markets and maritime insurance. The Portuguese Estado de India, history's first maritime empire, established patterns of international trade that persist in modern global commerce. Their system of fortified trading posts and naval patrols to protect shipping lanes mirrors contemporary maritime security strategies. The Dutch East India Company, founded to compete in the spice trade, became the world's first multinational corporation and established business practices still used today. Even the language of modern commerce bears traces of the spice trade era. Terms like venture capital originated from the financing of spice voyages, while getting into hot water referred to the dangerous business of spice trading. The phrase above board comes from the practice of keeping spice cargo visible on a ship's deck to prevent smuggling. The technological revolution sparked by the spice trade continues to influence modern innovation. Just as Portuguese shipwrights developed new vessel designs to navigate unknown waters, today's companies innovate to overcome global trade challenges. The careful mapping of wind patterns and currents by spice traders laid the groundwork for modern meteorology and oceanography. Perhaps most intriguingly, archaeologists continue to discover new evidence of previously unknown trading networks and routes. Recent underwater excavations have revealed sunken ports and forgotten trading posts, suggesting that the spice trade was even more extensive than previously believed. Each discovery adds new chapters to this epic story of global commerce. This rich history of the spice trade isn't just a tale of the past, it's a window into understanding our modern global economy. The same forces that drove merchants to risk everything for a cargo of spices continue to shape international trade and commerce today. The story of how tiny islands producing aromatic plants changed the course of world history offers invaluable insights for understanding contemporary global markets and trade relations. The journey you've just experienced through the age of spices is merely the beginning of an economic revolution that transformed the world. To uncover more secrets of the age of exploration and understand how this fascinating period continues to influence our modern world, join us at Modern Age Chronicles. Navigate through time with us as we explore the enduring legacy of history's greatest commercial adventure.